This is the session on mental health in tech, improving, mental wellness. Excuse me. My name is Dianna Keene. So first and foremost, I do want to say shout out to volunteers, sponsors for the conference. I'm sure this is an epic endeavor, to take on. So without them, nobody would be here. So thank you for that. I did also decide this morning after the keynote that I'm going to refer to all of my sessions now as unrequired work to my leadership and see how that goes across. So part of the reason behind this talk is personal for me a few years ago, but also, the world right now feels like a very crazy place. I think it kind of feels like it's in a spiral. And I was in my doctor's office a few weeks ago with just a routine visit, and she had told me at that time that 70% of her visits now pertain to mental health, which is almost a total flip of what her office used to see. So, it's an important topic, and we're going to dive into a little bit today. And I hope you walk away with some tools, some tips, some tricks, and ways to improve your mental health for yourself and for your teams if you're in a leadership position. So a little bit about me. Again, Dianna Keene. I hail from Kansas City, Missouri. I lead our automation of quality practice for all things software quality. I am a outdoor and gardening enthusiast. I love all of life's little creatures. I used to raise butterflies and bees. I once had a beehive. Strongly miss it, but one day I'll have it back. I love to bake. I think I'm a solidly good baker, a sufficient cook. I call myself a former kid mom because my son is now in New York City and doesn't have to listen to a thing I say, so it doesn't really count that I'm a mom anymore. I'm a cat mom. I am a cat volunteer. I just got through my first batch of fosters, and they were all successfully adopted, so highly recommending fostering for anybody who maybe has never done it before. It's incredibly rewarding. So, sorry, I'm going forward on my slide here. Okay, so my perspective really weighs in this world heavily on my experience through technology and growing into a leader in that space, and the ways that I've evolved my approach to mental health as a person and as a leader. And again, I hope you come away with some perspectives from this that you can implement in your personal life or in your teams. So mental health really does, this quote has always stuck with me, it's the only disease that we wait until stage 4 to treat. And when you think about that, that's really terrifying. I listened to this TED Talk a couple years ago on the mental health at the university level and how students are affected and how it's lacking in resources. And this quote has always really stuck with me, and the more I researched it and the more versions of it that I saw, it really drove me to learn why it is that we wait so long and to look in ways in which I can help the people around me to help them from getting to stage 4. So I think what's really profound is that when you think about things such as someone being diagnosed with an illness in various stages, we know that's bad, right? But oftentimes, when people are finding about things like that, those illnesses, they knew something was wrong, right? Or they didn't know something was wrong. They felt a sort of way, or they had a symptom, so they went to the doctor. The difference between physical illness and mental health is really a lot of times we know something's happening, right? And we know that we're not okay. And we kind of just, push that down. We're aware of it. It's escalating, but we typically choose to not seek treatment until we're at that point of desperation, or what we would call that stage 4. And so this speaks so much to the way that we really perceive mental health, especially in this country. We sort of toss it aside until we're feeling so desperate and so hopeless that then we're reaching out and looking for help. And people are really unsure of how to find help or even to get started, where to look, where to turn, what resources might be available. And I think more than anything, a lot of times people are just afraid to ask for help. There's a stigma attached to asking for help. So I think that we can do better, and I believe those efforts really begin with openness, awareness, and acceptance. And I really believe that we need a ton more preventative measures for mental health, maybe mental health checks, You go to a doctor for your wellness check or your yearly physical. Why don't we do the same with therapy or with a therapist or for our mental health? So it is important for me to note, I am not a doctor. I am not a therapist. I wouldn't call myself qualified or trained in this area. This is really just me talking about my experiences of what I've been through and sharing tips through my journey and things that have helped me provide a better environment for myself and for my team and for those in my personal life around me. So why is this important to me? I alluded to it a little bit, but I had a situation with a family member that had made it to stage 4. And really, they were at that point of desperation, and I had no idea until it kind of blew up into a big situation that then had to be dealt with. And so I thought a lot in that process of what could I have done, what could I have changed, how could I have prevented, what could I have made better if I had, known earlier. I really watched them struggle to rebuild their life. They had this kind of complete breakdown, and it opened my eyes to how much we're lacking in mental health care and how hard it is for people to ask for help. And again, a lot of that is because of the stigma that's associated to it. It also taught me how often you can miss the signs, or how often you can just kind of ignore the signs or pass over them, or reduce the importance of the symptoms that you're seeing. Or maybe you just say, well, today they're not doing great. Tomorrow they're going to be fine. 2 days ago they were okay. So you kind of play this game in your head of justifying why you're seeing the things that you're seeing with people. I did look back at that, and I saw a lot of moments that I probably could have engaged and I didn't. And if this person would have felt comfortable being fully open with me and transparent, we probably could have prevented them to getting to that stage 4, or at least helped a little bit. And I think if they would have been able to say, I'm not okay, and the response would have been, that's all right, we'll figure it out, I think the results would have been a lot different. So I think we need to create an environment where people are comfortable to say, I'm not okay, as much as they can go, I have a little tickle, or I feel a sneeze coming on, just saying you're not okay. And I want to be a part of that change of making this the norm. So why is this important at all? So as I've done my research and read through sources and read material, this is one of the stats that comes back all the time and that we see backed up by the National Mental Institute of Health. Only about 50% of people seek treatment. And I believe that if you were to run this number again, it's probably much lower. I think that, the stresses that people are under and the resources that they're not sure of, how to find or where to go, and just there's this constant cycle of impact coming at you, I think even less and less people are seeking treatment. So 50%, that's pretty scary. So some studies will say that 1 in 4 people will suffer from a mental health issue in any given year. Again, I think that's so much higher right now, given the current state of the world. I tend to believe that this is really high in the world of technology and the way that we work and the paces that we work at. So this is one of the reasons why I like to focus on my experience through the world of technology. So our most utilized resource, obviously, is our brain. So it's important for us to maintain a healthy mind. Aside from hands to type, which honestly right now, mine are so cold. I'm struggling with the arrow key. So if we're stressed, exhausted, preoccupied, and a lot of times reaching that burnout state, it's really difficult to be at your best every day and contribute your best work. And I think that as technologists or people involved in the world of technology, we tend to be perfectionists at heart, so that puts even more of that pressure on top of what we do, I think. We are always challenging ourselves to be learning and growing and achieving more. That's why you're here today. Bigger and better. We always are bigger and better. So we push, we have aggressive goals, we have deadlines, we get into this pattern of pushing through. And even when things get difficult, outside of work or personally, I do the same thing. I'm guilty of setting these personal mantras or milestones. It's if I can just make it through the next thing, I will do this. If I can make it through the next thing. And so then it becomes, the next task, the next sprint, the next release, the next project, and we end up with this, cycle and mantra of, let me just get through this piece, and then I'll go take care of myself. So those are the moments that arise that when it's challenging for us mentally, that we really forget and we kind of shut down and don't practice self-care. And if you reach a point where a cold becomes a fever or a sprain becomes a worse injury, you'll go to the doctor and you'll look for help. But when your brain is, overwhelmed and you just can't take it, you don't really seek help. A lot of times you just, again, push it down or try to get to the next thing. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed or you're not feeling like yourself for extended periods of time, you hope eventually you'll just feel better. Like, I'll feel better eventually. This will all pass. It's also not something that people around you can see all the time visually. And so if you come into a work with a broken arm, people are going to offer you sympathy. They're going to help you. They're going to ask what happened. Why aren't you feeling well? And so if people can't see that you're struggling, they're not going to ask for help. So they're having a harder time just seeing that you're not okay. So mental health issues that we often encounter can be situational or long-term managed conditions. Family events and stressors, things like illness, death, and divorce are very impactful in your life. Financial emergencies, legal issues, work-life balance, the recession, financial problems that are going on in the world, not just here in the United States, but globally, and how those are impacting what we do every day. Trauma-related issues that we face, anxiety, depression, and then on top of that, the trauma impact and trauma events can be triggers or multipliers for people who are already in situations or feeling under stress. There's a lot of information out about what's called the disaster or trauma response curve. And a lot of people are already in this space and you don't even know it. Maybe you're not aware of it. And basically what it means is that with things are happening and you start to feel better and you go through this cycle of all of the stages of this is scary and impactful and now I'm dealing with it and now I'm getting better and things feel better. And then what happens is just as you feel if you're coming off that cycle, you can get thrown back into that again by anything, anything that might trigger that. So when you look at the world through things like the pandemic, political turmoils, mass shootings, attacks on our human rights and equality through racial injustice, gender discrimination, economic fears, virus variants, any of those can really kind of keep you in this cycle of traumatic events that it's really hard to kind of get out of it once you're in it. And so these large world scale events aren't the only thing that affect it. Like each person, you're dealing with your own internal issues or personal trauma. So if you're dealing with a loss in your life and trying to get through that, and then something happens like, oh, now we have monkeypox. Now we have this. You kind of just get thrown into this continual cycle of feeling like the heavy pressure on you. So things like grief and loss really lend themselves to significant traumatic events. Things like managing grief, that's an entirely separate talk that we could do for an hour. But just because you've come back, say, from like bereavement, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't find yourself at the height of that curve again if things happen that bring back sort of that feeling or that overwhelming nature of what just happened in your life. So if you add on all these external factors of things that are going on, a lot of people are here right now, and it's hard to focus on anything, especially what you're trying to do at work, let alone just kind of get through the day sometimes. So the pandemic has really increased the impact and I would say overall urgency of mental health and the need for resources. So quarantining and sheltering in place caused a lot of stressors that exacerbated people who are dealing with anxiety or depression, job losses, economic impact. Those have compounded things such as, income disparity, food loss, food insecurity, dealing with the impacts of rising costs across the board. And just the nature of being socially distanced for people who really crave community and camaraderie kind of furthered that feeling of isolation and loneliness. So while it did create a very big impact on the stress of mental health, it has also drawn a lot of awareness and importance to the need for resources. And the availability of resources has kind of been a long-standing issue. This is nothing new. This has been going on for a while. And as more people seek treatment, that gap continues to widen. And there is a call for more aid and more help. And What's nice is that the conversations are really starting to happen further up and happening higher up than we've seen before. President Biden has announced his strategy for addressing mental health in the Unity Agenda. You see people like Warren Buffett, Ariana Huffington, if you follow her at all on LinkedIn, like this is a big thing for her to talk about the importance of mental health. So they've really become vocal advocates for this mental health care. Companies are offering more programs, building awareness campaigns to strengthen mental well-being, but I think we need to be really cautious of letting it become another corporate buzzword of, we're looking out for your mental health, but nothing ever comes from it. So we need to be very cautious of that. So why is this important to you? So as an individual, it's really important for you in your life to make sure that you're finding a balance of what works for you, and particularly in the world of work. A lot of times I do this as well. I find myself burying myself in work projects or things that need to get done because the outside world might be a little bit difficult, but this I know I have a little bit more control over. And so you really have to strive to find that balance. Find ways that help manage stress, whether that's through apps that are beneficial for this or just apps that soothe you. I'm guilty of just getting on TikTok and watching cat videos because that you kind of lose yourself in that space, and so it gives me the ability to kind of bring myself down of something that's really mindless and I don't have to think about it. Avoiding burnout. So when you start to feel those symptoms of burnout, I don't want to get up in the morning. I have the Sunday scaries. Sunday around 3 o'clock, you're like, oof. It's Monday tomorrow, I don't think I want to do this. Looking for things like that can be triggers of, am I getting burnt out at work? Do I need to back off a little bit? Do I need to talk to my leadership about what's going on with my work-life balance? Make sure that you're finding support when you need it, not just keeping everything to yourself, but reaching out to those in your community, in your personal community, in your work community. Have those people that you can bounce ideas off of, or have those people that you trust with, do I seem a little off? Do I seem like I'm okay? Just having that support system and those people that you can confide in to know, how do I come off externally? Not just, how do I feel about myself, but how am I coming off to the world? Knowing your limits and when to ask for help. Again, this goes back to when you're just pushing it down and saying that you'll be all right. When you realize that you're doing that multiple times a week or multiple times a month, maybe it's time that you reach out to somebody that is going to be there for you and not trying to hold this all in and do it on your own. Finding something that works for you to keep yourself mentally well. Self-care is a big thing for this. So just finding this stuff that makes you feel a release of stress. Find that group of people, again, that are gonna pull you out of kind of your space and get you involved and engaged in the world around you. Find that app that works for you. And a lot of times this is a trial and error type situation, and I always say this is that it's better to be proactive about your approach and think about this as if you would your dentist appointment. You know that you're gonna go every 6 months, you know that you're gonna have to make the appointment, so approach it from a more proactive standpoint instead of waiting until things are so bad that then it's difficult to find the help that you need. So one of the things about me from a personal standpoint though is that I find myself more of an introvert, and so I gravitate towards the quiet, but I also, I know that I have to put myself out there. So things like this are very difficult for me, and when I get done with this, I'm gonna probably go hide in a chair somewhere for a little while, because I know that's what I need to do to bring myself back down to a place where I'm comfortable, I feel okay, I'm in my safe space. So I know kind of what it is that I have to do to manage my own levels and my own stress. So I love to do this, but it is draining and exhausting for me. So I have to find a way to cope with, both sides of the coin there. I keep losing my mouse, and then I'm like, oh, where is it? So why is this important as a leader? So the health of your team, obviously, is super critical to make sure that they're feeling good about what's going on in the world, that they're feeling good about their place in the workplace. You do want to make sure that your team stays healthy, both mentally and physically, because as anybody knows that's been a leader, if people are out and they're not healthy, that affects what's going on in your business place. So, nobody wants to have people that are out all the time. And so that is one of the things that you always look for as a leader, is to say, is somebody missing a lot of time? Is somebody all of a sudden, is their behavior changing? So make sure that you're kind of keeping track of the health of your team to make sure that they're okay mentally and physically as well. Again, performance issues. This is one of the things that you want to make sure. You want highly performing teams. So you want to make sure that people are in their best space and have, all of the support that they need to continue to perform at the levels that you want them to perform at. Sorry, I'm so dry. Team availability and attendance, again, this goes back to the health of the team as well. Team retention. If people aren't happy on your teams and they're not happy with the level of leadership that you're providing and the support that you're giving them, they're going to go someplace that will. And so that's important to me just based on the relationships that I have with the people on my team. And this goes to the next point. Because they're your people, not because they're resources, not because they're headcount, but because they're your people. You want to care about them. You want to care what's going on in their lives and how they're feeling and how they're getting through the day. So this all comes back to team retention. If they're not happy with the leadership you're providing, they will go find someone that will. As anybody knows that's hired or had to build a team lately, retention is incredibly difficult right now. So I do have a lot of examples as a leader of why mental health matters to me. But in the interest of privacy, I share my own sort of event. In 2019, I was finalizing my divorce. I was also a caregiver for my mother. And later that year, I actually helped her transition out of this world. And those two things alone land in the top 10 things of the most stressful things in life. And work was really the last thing on my mind, but the honest truth is, I had to continue to work at some capacity during this time. And remote work then wasn't what it is now, and it wasn't as highly available. And so the requirement to be in the office was a lot more than it is now. And so the expectation of being out of office wasn't something that was met with, great fanfare. And so I really believe that at that point in time, I wouldn't have made it through that period of time if it wasn't for the leadership that I had who made it so I had that capability and the ability to be with my mother during that time. And also the team that I had under me was incredibly supportive. So without them, I wouldn't have, made it through that moment. So it's important to recognize that as a leader, if you create a great mental health foundation for them and support each other and make sure that everyone is well taken care of, not only does that benefit them, it does come back to support you as well in the great circle of things, that if you support your team, they will also support you in return when you need it. So what to do about it? So interestingly enough, that while we do experience high rates of burnout in technology, we are also changing the world and the way that people access resources. So software development has led to app creation for connecting people, both with counselors, therapists, et cetera. There are apps out there that are available for mindful meditation. Video conferencing has made that access to therapists remotely a lot easier process. So traditionally, you go in, you want to talk to a therapist, that's a very personal relationship. You have to be comfortable with that person. And so it was a longer process to find someone who you felt comfortable with. And I think having that remote capability and video conferencing now available, I think you can have a quicker experience to find a therapist that fits for you without having to do so much legwork. So it is a benefit, I feel like, with the modern technology that we've applied to therapy. The one thing I have found also is that typically a lot of people, only a small percentage of people actually know what resources are available to them and utilize them. So directing yourself and others to resources in the company is a really good place to start. And it's always best to engage those resources early. So again, finding a professional therapist can be a really difficult process and lengthy, as anyone who may have attempted to do this lately has found. But these resources do help bridge the gap by having remote services available. I think also there's this concept of apps are a quick way to find a very quick ear if you need someone to help you through something. And then there's turning to deeper therapy. So there are apps that are available that will give you just a quick person to be like, hey, not feeling great, can you help me direct you, or help me direct to other resources as well. So there are some faster solutions than just full extensive deep therapy. One of the things is during the time that I was caring for my mom, we had a caregiver support app called Care Loop through my employer, and I went ahead and signed up for an account. I never really ended up using it much. I think they helped me with some paperwork, but it was really nice knowing that I already had the account set up and ready to go if I needed it. And I always compare this to, we all have the teledoc apps now through work, which we wake up one morning, we don't feel well, we're like, oh, I'll teledoc. And then you're like, oh, who's that company again? Oh, let me go look it up in my benefits. Now now I have to create an account. Now I have to set up an appointment. I'll just go back to bed. Like, I don't want to deal with it. So if you're proactive about those types of things and sign up for accounts before you need them, you're going to be more likely to use them. So I think I always encourage, know about the benefits before you actually need them and know how to access them, create accounts, have them available. So, things to do for yourself. You'll hear those things all the time. Your physical health. Feed your body, hydrate, get plenty of sleep. And while they're repetitive, they are true. Try to exercise as much as possible. It will make you feel better. If you're dying while you're doing it, when it's over, you'll feel better. That's what I always tell myself, at least. But it is important for you to have an exercise regimen and make sure that you're taking care of your physical body as much as you can, because it will help you mentally as well and in the long run. Learn and practice mindful meditation. I'm terrible at meditation, but I do keep trying, and it does help when I can get myself to this space to clear my mind. But I know that a lot of people tell me the same thing, like, I just can't get to that space where my brain stops running. It's constantly running. But I do highly encourage people, keep at it. Eventually, it will be one of those things that you'll enjoy doing, or you'll be one of those great, glorious people who right off the bat are like, meditation, love it, greatest thing ever. I'll do it for the rest of my life. Utilizing technologies, apps, remote access to counselors and therapists, being aware of the resources that are available to you, and proactively seeking those resources. Don't wait until you're at stage 4 to look for resources to help you. Build your support network. Again, find those people that are out there that make you feel like you have a community within your world. If you're feeling lonely, find ways to build people around you that will support you. Nurture your relationships. I know this is one of the things that gets really hard for me. So what I do is try to deploy some of the checks that I use in my professional life to my personal life. So I set reminders to reach out to people. Because everybody is this way, but I'll get bad where I'm like, oh, I saw my friends, and then I'm like, wait, when did I see my friends? It's been 6 months, or it's been 4 months since we last did something together. So I decided that I would set myself reminders that once a month it was like, hey, check in on your friends, let's schedule a day to do something. Set recurring appointments. There's somebody that you want to see all the time. We know calendars get busy. I can't even make a dentist appointment work most of the time because it's scheduled so far in advance, so I end up changing it a lot. But if you at least set something in stone and say, I'm going to see this person once a month, then worst case scenario, you're going to shift it. But it's better than waiting 9 months before you see them again because you haven't reached out. Implementing ceremonies into your life. I know this sounds weird, but taking stuff from the agile world of do retrospectives of month to month, like how am I feeling about my work? How am I feeling about my personal life, my relationships? How do I feel about myself? What am I doing? Am I doing things that are making me feel better about, where I'm going? Do I have goals that I'm trying to achieve? So do retrospectives on your own life. A high-low of the day, I love this one, or a high-low of the week. Make sure that you're talking about things, having conversations about the way you're feeling. Don't keep it all internal. Give yourself grace and forgive yourself for mistakes. I think grace is one of the things that we don't give ourselves enough of. I think most of us tend to be, as I said before, perfectionists and work really hard and expect a lot out of ourselves. And when things go wrong or things don't feel right, we put it on ourselves. And we, don't give ourselves enough grace in the world. Practice self-care. That one for sure is a big thing. This is my self-care most of the time because cats are great. They can't talk back. They come greet you at the door. They will love you as long as you feed them. They make you feel like the most important person in the world. But again, that's part of my self-care. These are some other things that I love to do. So being outside, taking a walk, stepping out to grab a coffee, finding new coffee shops. We all get in our little bubble and it's like, can I make coffee cheaper at home? Yeah, absolutely. Could I buy myself a fancy espresso machine to make the coffee that I buy down the street for like $7 some now? I don't even remember what crazy number it's up to that made me actually reduce my coffee habit. But it forces me out of my routine and makes me get out of the house and interact with people. And so I feel like if I didn't have those things and those routines in my life, I would probably just stay home with the cats. I found a partner that he is incredibly foundational to my mental health and really challenges me and completes who I am as a person and gives me opportunities to be who I am, but also to work on myself and change things about myself that I don't like. So previously, I didn't have that, but I have that in a partner now. So I didn't realize how important it was until I had it. Again, fostering kittens, if you haven't done this, working from home and watching 4 little kittens act like complete loons in a bedroom while you're on, some highly important conference call is probably the most serotonin boosting thing you can ever do in your whole life. You'll laugh for hours. So again, highly recommend fostering kittens. It's definitely a perk of remote work. And honestly, the more I research about mental health and strategies to implement, the more I integrate those things into my own life, and I have realized how much more depth and strength my personal relationships now have. So as a leader, it's really important to listen, be open, and be available. I think that this is something that we forget oftentimes in our roles of leadership. I'm not sure how many people in the room are in leadership positions, but being available and listening to people is probably one of the most critical things about my role that I do all the time. Around mental health, help remove the stigma. Let it be okay to talk about it in your group of people, in your organization. I kind of look at it the same way I did when I had my son around. Like, I create a safe space. This is a safe space for you. Home is a safe space. So my place within the workplace, I consider my practice and my people, we're a home. So this is a safe space for us. Create positive environments and let people be comfortable in who they really are. So let people be their authentic self. If they have cultural things that they want to share and that they're proud of, let that be known. If they have things that they enjoy doing, let those all be known. If they have a family that looks different from somebody else on the team, that's okay, let that be known. So all of these things within my group, these are all okay. I want you to be comfortable with who you really are. Again, utilizing technologies, apps, remote access to counselors and therapists. I say that a lot because I think this has been such a beneficial thing in the world of mental health. Practice self-care, ensure your teams and coworkers do the same thing. I recently learned about micro-affirmations, which are just the counter to microaggressions, and how they affect people on your team. These are just small little things that you say to people throughout the day. And I love to drop just weird things into my Teams channel for my team, like just every few days or once a week, like, hey, I acknowledge the work that you're doing. You guys have been doing a great job. And genuinely address the things that they're working on and the things that they're doing, not just some random, hey guys, good job, because that's not gonna go, super far for very long, but taking a genuine interest in the activities that they're doing, the efforts that they're putting out there, the things that they're accomplishing. I think that's super important to acknowledge those within your teams. Or as I call it, spreading happiness in the Teams channel. Again, learning about available resources, directing people to those. It's really important also to know when you need to engage at a higher level and what is the process for that. So if someone on your team is really struggling and they come to you and you're like, I'm out of my depth and I don't know how to handle this. Make sure that that's something you've thought about beforehand and that you know what you need to do next and you know how you need to handle that situation, because it will come up at some point in time. I think just knowing your people, awareness of their personalities, how do they cope, what makes them tick, what brings them joy, what do they absolutely hate to do, and then really make sure that you're creating touch point opportunities for the people on your team. So you can do that through one-on-ones, but those, you have to honor them. If you're going to schedule them, you have to honor them and give them the value that they have and use them to learn more about the person than just the day-to-day activities. Really leave space in there to say, who are you as a person? What is it you want to achieve? How can I help you get there? Not just, what'd you do yesterday? What'd you do last week? How are things going? Everything's good? Good, great. Nothing for me? No. But really use that as an opportunity to give them time to talk about themselves and their goals, but also you to reflect on, what do I see for you in your future? Where do we see your career going? Talk about things that are impactful. Change those one-on-ones up so people feel comfortable. So take them on a walk, take them for a coffee. It doesn't always have to be a stiff, rigid, meeting that people dread having once a week. Make it so people actually want to talk to you and engage with you. I encourage and participate in skip levels because there are a lot of people in my org that I don't talk to every single day. And if they never see me and they're never talking to me, they probably wonder as a leader if, number one, if I even exist and what is it that I actually do, and do I know who they are and do I care about them? The answer to that is yes, but if I'm not actively engaging with them in some way, they'll never know. So oftentimes, too, you can see areas of conflict. If you have a leader that's not super compatible with someone on their team, it might be that you just need to switch them up and try them with a different person. So I've had that happen before where I get feedback about a person, and then I have a skip level with them, and I'm like, well, I think they're fantastic and have a lot to offer. So clearly we just have a mismatch here. And if you're not doing skip levels and you're only taking your leadership's word for it, you would never know. Not that you have bad leaders, but sometimes people just don't match. I have an MIP process that I implemented. It's actually called MIP-MIB, so most important point, most important beef, and they send that once a week. And initially I did that to get a better hold on what was it that we were actually doing that was impactful to the business and to the client. And kind of what I got out of it instead was I got a really deep dive into people and what they love, what makes them tick, what do they hate. I also got very familiar with their writing styles and the tone of how they write. And so I could recognize really quickly from week to week if somebody was disengaging, if something was off about someone. And so generally what I would do is connect with their leader, and because they're copied on it. So I would connect with their leader and be like, hey, this seems like a different tone than how they normally write, or this is different content than they normally provide. So is there something, going on? Is something off? And then if you see it continue to change over, the course of a few weeks, then I will reach out to that person directly and see, kind of how they're feeling, or provide feedback, or if I'm seeing things about they're not being challenged in their work, that I can take that, and then I have an opportunity to do something with that. Again, having and knowing the tools available to assist them, managing their workload and burnout. So I can't stand the glorification of the busy and the overworked. Oh my gosh, I worked 60 hours last week. I worked 70 hours last. No, no congratulations there. We don't want that to continue to happen. And so I don't do the glorification of overworking. To me, that's a sign to say either the work is not getting done effectively or we're giving you too much and you're not saying uncle. So I think it's super important to manage that kind of glorification of working too much. Encouraging time off for your people and create an environment where they can actually take time off. So a lot of times people just don't take time off because, number one, they don't want to be bothered when they're out, and they know that if they take time off, they're just going to answer emails on vacation anyway. So I think it's important to do cross-training and pairing within your group so that people, when they want to take time off, they actually get to take time off. Obviously there's critical situations that pop up, but I try as much as possible, let's avoid that. Let's not create this environment where you're continuing to work on vacation but using your vacation hours. That doesn't make sense. Build recovery time into your workplace. I've started to try to do this more and more, and hopefully I can get to a place where it's more consistent to say, we just did something really big. It took a lot of extra effort. Take a comp day. Take some time off if you need it. But I think it's important to try to build that recovery time in and really acknowledge difficult or hard tasks or things that took an immense amount of effort from a lot of people. So let's try to build in some recovery time for you. Having conversations about what you can impact and what you can't. So I've had people come to me before about, again, their work-life balance. Okay, we can help there. Let's talk about what's creating it. Is it too much work? Is it the way you're working? What's going on that's creating this imbalance? So we'll come up with a strategy. How relationships are impacted. You as a leader will have people come to you about their personal relationships. It's inevitable. That's a conversation that I can't really engage in at the level that sometimes people want you to. But what you can address is if there are things happening here in the workplace that are affecting and impacting your personal life, I can help with that. If you're working too much and your relationship is suffering as a part of that, I can help with that. I can't fix your relationships, but I can help with the things that might be affecting your relationships. So let's have an honest conversation about that. I think one of the most important things is just the empathy of being available and saying, I'm here, I understand. I think sometimes people I know that people often just want to be heard and don't want to be dismissed. And so being empathetic to their position, understanding where they're coming from, giving them an ear is probably one of the most important things that you can do in this space. Again, make it okay to not be okay. People on my team will hit me up midday, not feeling it, not having a great day, just don't feel good about what's happening today, or just having a rough day. I don't have a lot going on. Any issue if I just peace out? No, not at all. I don't have to have a justification for why you don't want to be here. You have PTO, you have time off, you're feeling it, not feeling it, you make the decision. I don't need for you to be sick, and I don't need for you to give me an excuse. You just tell me you don't want to be here. That's enough for me. Obviously, you have to take that with a grain of salt, that if it becomes, every other day I don't want to be here, then you have to, invest in what's the deeper issue. But people wake up and just don't want to do this today, right? We all have those days. And for me, that's okay. That's a reason enough. I think taking care of your mental health as a leader and leading by example and showing that you're actually doing these things and you're promoting these things that you talk about is important. It's just super critical that leaders are maintaining mental wellness and that the mental health awareness of their teams is prioritized. I think we need to value mental health performance as much as we do job performance. And I think that needs to be prioritized. I think it's super vital to have an understanding of your team and a connection to their well-being, and that we have to have the ability to create space for them to feel safe, to feel supported, and be open about the state of their mental health and embrace that vulnerability, and that leaders need to be aware of what's available to themselves and their teams at all times, and it's important to create an approach that's accessible, and it's also able to evolve as challenges arise and things change. So we have to create, open spaces for conversation. So how can we do more? I think it's super important to engage and participate in what's going on in your companies. Educate yourself as to what's available. Educate yourself in what you could make available. Educate yourself in what your HR department might allow you to do, how you can partner with them, what can we make available. Complete a mental health first aid course. I've done one of these because you can also use this in your community, not just in your workplace. It's super important for the homeless community and what they deal with from a mental health perspective. A lot of times police are engaged when we don't need policing. They need resources and they need people to talk to. So a mental health first aid course is really helpful in community as well as in the corporate environment, because it teaches you how to detect and respond to symptoms of mental illness. And I mean, we teach people CPR all the time. We have defibrillators in the hallways everywhere to be prepared for emergencies, and mental health emergencies are just as critical. Creating and supporting government policies that support mental health. So not just, in the workplace, but in your community. Are there people representing you that are driving these things forward, that are making these a part of community involvement down to the policy level, investigating what's available in the education system for mental health? It is fundamentally flawed, and it only gets worse as they get bigger. So it's really important to talk about or know who's there in your community that's forming policies, both at the state, local, county. Small government is where you have more impact with these things than if you go all the way to the federal level. Help develop processes that'll help your people in your company, company-wide, that can develop things that are around awareness, support. What are some treatment options? What assistance can we offer? So if you have an organization that doesn't have these processes in place, we do, where I currently am, but we also have our own repository for our group. So it doesn't have to just be a company-wide thing. You can implement, how do we link out to available resources that maybe my team might be interested in ways to support each other. And then creating resilient communities, both professionally and personally. And resiliency is really referred to as how do you bounce back from things when they go wrong? How do you keep yourself prepared for when situations might change or they don't go as planned, or you find yourself in some sort of a conflict? And resilient people really, they have a positive image of the future. They set goals for themselves. They set tasks to achieve their goals. They're empathetic. They're compassionate. And resilient people are good at maintaining healthy relationships. They don't think of themselves as victims. They focus on things that they have control on and what they can change. So some areas of personal resilience: learn how to relax, learn how to self-soothe, how to be in a state of calm and not always find yourself in a heightened area or way of stress. Practice thought awareness, like, why do I feel this way right now? What is it that's triggering the feeling? Why am I in this state? And actually think about why you're feeling the thing versus just letting yourself be kind of overtaken by that. Edit your outlook, so try and lean away from the pessimism and find something good. I'm a firm believer that there is always joy to be found in the world. Sometimes it feels like it's harder to find it and you have to dig a little bit, but there's always joy in the world. If it's cupcakes, if it's cats, because you can't tell I like cats. I also like dogs, I like all animals, but cats are my jam right now. But there's always joy in the world, and sometimes it's just getting through the things that don't feel joyful to find the joy nugget. Learn from your mistakes and failures. Again, give yourself grace and realize a step is better than no step forward. Just keep moving. And I know a lot of people are like this. I used to be like this, that if I had a big goal in mind and I set that goal, and the first time something went wrong, throw it all away. Throw it all away and start over. And that's just not realistic. Things have to be perfect. They don't. Just keep making steps forward. Acknowledge that something happened, reset, and continue to move. Choose your response is a big one. I own my reactions. I can't control the situation around me, but I can control how I react to it. And that's a big one that I think a lot of people need to learn, is the situation might be frustrating, but your reaction to it isn't helping things. It's definitely not helping you feel better. So control your reaction to the situation. Maintain a perspective. So what is this that's really happening? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I making this bigger than it needs to be? And again, that's kind of bringing it back down to the reality of what's actually happening, what's triggering the feeling. Set yourself goals. Having a direction, having a goal has always been beneficial in my life. I can't ever say that there was a time that having a goal wasn't a good idea for me, but I think it is a good thing for people to have goals. I know in the workplace especially, this is something that, I don't know, it's kind of met with giggles sometimes because goal setting can kind of be a joke within a lot of organizations, but I really put a lot of focus on this for not only my own personal resilience, but also for the resilience of the people in my group, but we set realistic goals, and what can you achieve for yourself, not just what are the goals that we're shoving down at you from the company, but what are goals you really want, and how can we make those things happen for you? Build your self-confidence. I wish I had a golden ticket for this. This would be more valuable to me, I'm going to say, than the 1 billion lottery. That's a lie, but that's a lie. I could buy my self-confidence with 1 point whatever billion. But I really do wish that I had this, and the one piece of advice I give people is trust the people around you who tell you who you are. I will shoot down a compliment faster than anybody. If you compliment me on something, I will and walk away because I'm very hard on myself. But listen to the people around you that know you and talk to you and interact with you every day. When they tell you what your superpowers are, believe them and look down that path. Because I feel like I've been guided a lot of places in my life by people when I started listening to what they told me I was good at. They might be crazy, and you might dig down that path and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I am not a, stunt woman. But I think it's worth investigating when people tell you what your superpowers are, especially if you hear the same thing more than once. Maybe that's a trigger that there's something there that you're missing. Develop strong relationships. Find your people. Surround you with people that provide you value. Start looking at the people around you. If they're not providing you value and they're bringing you down, it might be time to reevaluate who you surround yourself with. And that's a hard thing to look at and a hard conversation to have. But look for the people that are in your life that give you happiness, that give you, what I call radical candor, that aren't going to BS you about who you are and what you do. But find people that are providing you value in some way, whether they're bringing you happiness because they make you laugh or they push you to be a better version of yourself. This is a big one for me, is to be flexible, because I love to get things to a solid state and never touch it again. I don't ever want to look at it again. I want it to be perfect, and then I want to put it away. And the truth is, that's never going to happen. I have to be flexible. I have to learn how to be flexible. I have to acknowledge that no matter how perfect I made it, someone's going to come along and crush it, and I'm going to have to rebuild it. So the sooner I accept that change is coming, the better off I will be. So be flexible. So in a place of personal resilience, Creating strong support system. Again, let your people know that they are safe with you and safe with each other, and really foster that. Don't let that just be, a thing that you say you're going to do and then you don't follow up on it. So create that system. Create a purpose around what you're doing, no matter what type of organization that you work for. Why are we here and why are we doing this work? Obviously, we all want to get paid. That's the ultimate at the end of the day. But people are going to be happier if they feel some sort of purpose behind what we are doing. What do we want to achieve as a group? What can we build together? Build communities and connections. Again, remember that they're your people. You're responsible for them in some way, and you care about what happens to them. If you don't care about what happens to them, you're probably not cut out to be a leader. That's just the truth. You should care about what's going on in their life, if they are successful, if they are happy, if they are doing things that make them grow as a person. And you're doing it right if, my example is I had a person in my group that came to me and was like, hey, I'm looking at other jobs and I'm not sure what to do because I love it here, but this is an opportunity that really is, super important to me, and it's something that I don't think I can walk away from. And my job in that moment is not to be mad, it's not to be frustrated, it's not to question why. My job is to say, okay, what's the challenge? Where are you confused? What can we talk through to help you make the decision? And at the end of the day, what is it that you ultimately want? Or, is it just one thing that's driving you to go? So it's important to know that if somebody wants to leave your org and you're their leader, you should help them make that decision. And you should help them make the best decision for them. And if they choose to leave, you should happily wish them away and hope that they come back. Protecting your team, again, stand up for them. If something goes wrong, you stand up for them. And I think part of that is also acknowledging that you're giving them an opportunity to grow and take risks. It's okay if we fail. We just don't want to do that again. We don't want to keep failing at the same thing. But look for opportunities, no matter if it's something small, something big, let's take a risk. I'm very guilty of the phrase of, I will go ahead and do it and ask for forgiveness later, and I expect the same from my team. Bias to action, do something. Take a risk. It's okay, I'll be here. If we colossally fail, it's on me, I'll take the beating. Practice adaptability, again, be flexible. We'll be okay if something goes wrong, we'll learn from it, we'll adapt, we'll move. But make sure that your team knows that you're willing to take that and to be adaptable to whatever the situations are. Building trust. They have to trust you, and you have to trust them. You have to trust them to make the decisions. You have to trust them that they have, that you hired them to do a job and that you trust them to do that job. That's a big thing for me. I didn't hire you to tell you what to do every day. I hired you because you have a skill set that I, need in my org, and I want you to do everything with that skill set, and I trust you to do it. Nurture optimism. So we have each other's backs. That's kind of the message to send. We can be upset about the day. We can be upset about what someone said to us, but we're not going to harbor the negativity. We're going to foster a positive environment as much as possible. We're not going to pretend that everything's great and nothing ever goes wrong. We're not going to dwell in that area. We're going to keep moving forward and keep things positive. And again, we can be unhappy with the situation, but we're not going to live in that space. And communicate and align tasks to purpose. This was always a big thing for me when someone would come to me and be like, I need you to do this thing. I'm like a 3-year-old. The first question is, why? Why? And I think a lot of times when you come to people and you say, I need you to do this thing, and here's why, or here's the reason behind it, here's the motivator, here's what we want to accomplish, people are more likely to be like, on board, got it, because everybody wants to know, why are we doing this? What's the alignment here? What's the purpose? So how do you create resources in your org? Being a champion of mental health, if it's not already owned by someone, you can take that role. You can be that person. Everybody's like, oh, I want to be a part of it, but I don't want to own it. So you do take a lot on yourself if you put yourself out there to do things. It's always that great idea. I have a great idea, and then someone's like, okay, great, Diana, you're gonna run with that, right? And you're like, oh yeah, I just volunteered. But I would say if this is something that's important to you, offer to be that champion and help establish those programs. Create repositories for resources, whether they're external, internal, have a place for people to go that says these are things I can find outside the org or things I can find within the org. Partner with your HR to create EAP benefits if they're not already available. Some orgs are really great at having mental health benefits, and others have a long way to go. So there are some that don't have anything at all. So if this is important to you and you want these types of benefits, approach HR about how do we start to get these included? What are we doing in the next year? This is a problem. This is an epidemic. Let's do something about it. Promote and support groups and meetings. This is a big thing. You'll have a lot of people step up and want to present something about mental health. And there's nothing more disappointing than to feel really passionate about something and then you go to present it and like 2 people show up. So if you have somebody in your organization that's passionate about something or wants to start something, you as the leader need to support it. And not just you need to reach out to your peers across the pond, across the aisle, across the screen and say, hey, I have a person in my organization that's doing this thing. Come with me to support them. Be on the meeting. I think that's one of the things that is the most important from a leadership perspective. Drive engagement. So again, that falls under the make sure that you're having people participate in the meeting, but throw it out there. Throw articles out there that are meaningful to you, that might help people want to engage in this more or see the value of putting this into your organization. And above all, be an ally to this cause. Be available if people want someone to talk to. I know we've set up like buddy groups in teams where if people just want someone to chat with, or somebody's like, I never eat lunch with anybody, you can ask someone to come eat lunch with you. And the cool thing is you always see that grow into a bigger group. So there are ways to be an ally to these types of things in your organization, even if you don't necessarily want to lead them. You can come up with ideas to help support the programs. But ultimately, I think we need to be comprehensive when we talk about mental health and provide resources and support for each other and ourselves in this kind of adventure. We have to be able as leaders to coach and guide performance and mental wellness to ensure professional and personal growth of our teams and create spaces that allow for the conversations around this and stop treating it like it's something to avoid or something people should deal with on their own. We need to support one another and create more preventative measures to pair with treatment and eliminate things getting to stage 4 emergencies. So again, top takeaways that I feel here, know your resources and what's available to you and your teams. Help build these programs if they don't exist and provide awareness. Support efforts to seek assistance from people in your teams, or if you know someone within your company or a friend that's struggling, support their efforts to get help. Help find them something. Send them a link. Here's an emergency app you can download for someone to talk to today, and then they'll get you something further. Make mental wellness a priority for yourself and for the teams that you're a part of or leading. Build that resilience for yourself and for your teams. Reduce the stigma. It's okay to not be okay. And then make sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking care of each other. So these are some of the resources that I fall back to. I know that's probably very impossible to see, that I'm happy to engage with anybody if they want these further. I can provide them to you. And thank you for listening to me today. I appreciate you giving me some of your time and letting me squawk at you about this thing that's very important to me. And then this is my contact information via Popple. I don't know if it's bright enough to actually scan that. This has a link to my LinkedIn page, my email, a software meetup group that I host in Kansas City, and then there's also a link there for a survey that's just feedback on this particular talk. If anyone is interested in providing that, I would be eternally grateful for anybody that wants to do that. Other than that, appreciate your time. Thank you.